So as we're moving into learning goal 39, we're going to be going back to polynomials and taking a look at what does it mean to put two of them together in a multiplication statement. We've looked at putting together like terms with addition, so kind of adding them together. And now we're going to take a look at when we multiply two terms together and what does that look like. So a little bit of review before we get going here. A polynomial, okay, is an expression which consists of two or more terms. Okay, so it's an expression that consists of two or more terms. What is a term? Well, let's go over what a term is. A term is a combination of a coefficient, is just a number, and that's usually going to be an integer number, and variables, or variables, we'll put a little s in there, which are multiplied together. Okay, so we have a number and a variable or variables which are multiplied together. Now, if the term doesn't have any variables, okay, we could have terms that don't have any variables, we call that a constant. And we're going to take a look at what are these terms and what does a polynomial look like. A polynomial can have any number of terms. If it's only a one-term polynomial, we don't really call it a polynomial, we call it a monomial. But in this case here, polynomial is just going to refer to our combination of terms. Now, if a variable in the term has an exponent, this is the number of times the variable is multiplied inside the term. So a couple of examples here, if we see something like x squared, that's going to be x being multiplied to x, so x times x. If we see x cubed, it's going to be x times x times x. And remember that little dot means multiply, and so sometimes we'll see it like that. Now, if we have x times x times x, we don't actually really need to write out all three of those. We just write it out as x cubed, x times x, or here, I'm just going to put it in over here. So x squared is x times x. Okay, that would be x squared, right? X is being multiplied to x. This should be multiplied, not multiple. So that's what x squared means. So we have to remember that when we're talking about a term. Now, multiplying terms together is our major topic in this lesson here, and we're going to take a look at how do we do that. So let's start off with some of the basics. Here we have two terms, 5 and 4, and we're multiplying them together. What you might notice is that these are both constants. Okay, and so I'm going to put that in here. Both of these terms only have a numerical value. There's no variable, so they are constants. Okay? And because of that, the numbers are just multiplied together. And a simplified term is the result. When I say simplified, I just mean what happens when we multiply these two together. Well, 5 times 4, we have done that in the past, is just 20. Okay, so it's just 20. And that would be the answer to our question. Okay, 5 times 4 is 20. Now, we could also move on to something a little more difficult. We can multiply two x's together. Okay, when variables are multiplied together, the simplified term will be the result of those two variables. Okay, if they are the same value, okay, therefore the same letter, and we add the exponents together. Okay, so in the case here, we have two x's being multiplied together, x times x. Each of them has an exponent of 1. Okay, so each of them has an exponent of 1, which is a little bit different to think of because we don't actually see the 1. But each has an exponent of 1, and therefore we add them together. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So this one here is going to be x squared. Okay, so x times x is the same as x squared. Now, on the other hand, if they are different values, and therefore different letters. Okay. Then we just combine them into a simplified multiplication statement. And what I mean by that is if we see something like x times y, our result from that, and I'm going to do it like this here, would just be xy, which is x times y. We can't actually simplify it any farther than that, and so that's as far as we're going to go. Okay, so if we see two variables multiplied together and they're different, then we just pop them together. If they are the same, we can then add the exponents. We might even see some where we have, different combinations of those two as well. Now, here we multiply two terms together, we got an answer. Here we multiply two terms together, we get an answer or a simplified term. Here we did the same thing. But you'll notice that in each case, I've isolated either just numbers or just letters. What happens if we put some of that together? Well, here's how we do it. To multiply two terms together, the coefficients or constants, so that number needs to be multiplied together. Okay, so we're going to multiply the numbers together, and the variables need to be multiplied together. Okay, so what we're going to do is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply the numbers together, and then we're going to multiply the variables together. Once we've done that between the two terms, we then combine them back into the same term. So these are then combined back into one term. They're combined back into one term. Let's go through a bunch of examples. Now I have a whole bunch of examples because I want to show you just a bunch of these on the video. So here we have 3x times 4. So a little dot, remember, means times. You'll notice this first term here has a number and a letter. The second term only has a number. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this in three parts. Okay, the first part is we're going to multiply the numbers together. Okay, and so we're going to do 3 times 4, and 3 times 4 is 12. The next step is we're going to take the letters. Okay, and so here we have x times, and I'm going to put, well, I can't do a blank. This doesn't like blank. Okay, x times, well, it's blank. There is nothing. So in other words, what we're going to be left with is just x. So if we don't have any letter here, we're just going to be left with x because there's one x, that's it. So then we just continue and we keep on going with that. Now, when we put this together as our final answer, okay, we're going to take the 12 from the number, and we're going to take the x from the variables here. And our final answer is going to be 12x. I'm just going to put an equal sign there because this whole thing is going to equal to 12x. So we multiply the numbers together, and then we multiply the variables together to come up with our final answer. This one here, question number 2, has both a number and a letter inside of this multiplication statement. And so we might either see to multiply or to simplify. Both are going to be legit. Let's take the two numbers, 2 times 4. Well, 2 times 4 is just 8. So 8 is going to be our new number. Now let's take our two letters. So we have an A in both. And remember that when we multiply the same letter together twice, A times A is going to be A squared. Well, once we've done that, then we need to combine our two results together. So our combined result together here, and let's put that back in here, is going to be the number and then the letter being multiplied together. In this case, it's 8a squared. It's 8a squared. And that would then be our final answer. Okay, so this would then be our final answer. All right, let's keep on going with a few more here. Question 3 has a squared times a. So you'll notice here now we've got no numbers, and I'm going to go through those numbers really quickly here, or I'm going to put that in here. Remember, if there's nothing in front of the a's, it's just 1. So it's going to be 1 times 1, and that equals 1. So it doesn't actually change anything. It's just good that we understand that it is, in fact, there. Then we have a squared times a. Well, a squared is the same as a times a. And a is just a to the power of 1. So what you see here is we have 2 over here and we have 1 here. When we combine those, it's going to give us a cubed. So there are now 3 A's, there we go, 3 A's in this collection instead of just 2 or 1, okay? When we add them together, so in this case here, even though we're multiplying, I realize we're multiplying, we need to add the exponents together. We could also think of this as the A squared is A times A, and then we're multiplying it to A, right? Now there's 3 A's. So we can think of it that way as well. Oops. There we go. Okay, we think of it that way as well. Now our final answer is going to be the 2 combined, okay, the 1 and the A cubed. And 1 we don't actually have to write in there, but the A cubed we will. We're just going to write it as A cubed. And that would be our final answer. Let me put the equal sign in front of us so we know that that's our final answer. Okay, so that's if we have 2 letters and if one has something bigger than a 1 for the variable. All right, next example here, and we're going to keep on going through. We've got a few more to go here. 5 times r. Well, in this case here, we have a constant and just a variable. So what we're going to have is, remember, in front of the r is a 1. So it's going to be 5 times 1, and this is going to give us 5. Okay, that one really doesn't change. And then the other side, we have nothing. Okay, there's nothing there, and we're going to multiply that to r. And so that's just going to give us r. So in this case here, you might actually realize that we don't have to do a whole lot of work. Okay, you don't actually really have to show all of this work here. All you need to do is show that you're multiplying the 2 together. So if we multiply a number and a letter together, the answer is just going to give us the number and letter multiplied together, or 5r. And that would be our answer in that case. R, yes, our answer. Okay, now we're going to throw in something different. We're going to throw in a negative. Okay, and how does that change it, or does it change it? And it should not change it at all. Okay, all we're doing now is we're dealing with negatives, and that's okay. So let's start by looking at the 2 that are multiplied together. You'll notice here we have a term inside brackets and a term inside brackets being put together. That's multiplying. Okay, so if there's no operation, it means to multiply. So let's start off with the negative 5, and we're multiplying it to positive 2. I'm taking the brackets off. I'm showing the multiplying sign. Okay, both of them work. We can use both of them there. When we multiply this together, it's going to give us negative 10. Remember, 1 negative and 1 positive give us a negative answer. So in this case here, it's going to be negative 10. Now, the letters that we have there, we have a y in the first one and a y in the second one. 2 y's give us y squared. Okay, so 2 y's give us y squared, which means that our final answer is going to be negative 10 y squared. So that's a negative 10 as a coefficient and y squared as the variable. And what we can do is we can put the brackets around it if you really want to, showing that it's a negative value. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you can definitely do that when you have a negative. Just to remind yourself, it is a negative. Next one here. This one, again, just adding a little bit of complexity. It may not seem complex to some, it may seem a little more complex to others. But in this case here, we have our numbers in front are both negatives. So we have a negative 4 times or multiplied to a negative 7. Now when we do this, remember 2 negatives give us a positive. So our answer is going to be positive 28. It's going to be positive 28. Now our variables, we're never going to deal with the negatives. They're always going to be positive. So in this case here, we have an h and we have an h squared. Again, just keep them as positives. Only the coefficient will be a negative or a positive. H times h squared means that we have h cubed. And our final answer there, we're going to have the 28 in front, and we're going to have the h cubed in behind, and that's going to be our final answer, 28h cubed. Okay, because we have 1 h and 2 h's, and we add them together to get 3 h's. Remember, adding is part of what we do with exponents, but not when we're multiplying. All right, number 7 here, we have 2e and 3f, and those 2 different numbers are not a mistake, or different letters are not a mistake. That is on purpose. We're going to look at how do we multiply different variables. Well, we start with the numbers in front, 2 times 3, and that's going to give us 6. They're both positive, so it's going to give us a positive answer. Then we move on to the variables, and we have e times f. Now, when we have 2 different ones, remember above, what we'll do is we'll just write it out as EF. Okay. The order does not matter. You can write it as FE if you wanted to as well. I will often do it in alphabetical order. So I'll do the first letter of the alphabet and then the next letter of the alphabet. Okay. In this case, it's EF. That becomes a little bit more important when we start putting like terms together and being able to realize what we have. Then we put all the values together. So we have the 6 in the front and the EF in behind, and that would be our simplified or completed term. One last example here before I'm going to turn this video off and get you to do a few questions. Okay. So this one right here, we have a positive multiplied to a negative, and we have two different variables. Again, we have an r squared and we have a t. So we're going to start by doing the numbers. Okay, 4 times or multiplied to negative 3, and this gives us negative 12. Again, I put into brackets. You don't need to. Notice here I didn't, here I did. It's just a way of organizing things. It doesn't have to be done, but it can be if you want. That's our number. So our number is going to be negative 12. Our letters are r squared, and we're multiplying it to t. Now, when we see something like this, the squared is only on the r. It means we have 2 r's and 1 t. So when we combine that, it's still going to be 2 r's and 1 t. Right? 2 r's and 1 t. Or we could write it as t r squared. But the squared sticks on the r. It does not transfer over to the t. It sticks to the r. Now I realize those two letters look very much alike, and I apologize for that. But our final answer is going to be negative 12 r squared t. Okay, and that's going to be our final answer. Now we have a variety of variables in there. Okay, specifically we have 2 r's and 1 t, but it's all one term and it's all being multiplied together. Now I'd like you to work on questions 1 to 4. It's dealing with just a monomial times a monomial, multiplying two terms together. I just want you to go through the terms. If it helps to use this here where you do numbers and then letters, do that. If you can see it all kind of together, you can put it on all together as well.